This is WWE superstar Drew McIntyre, and you're listening to the WWE Podcast.
The champ is
the one that everybody wants, me.
It's going to WrestleMania. Claymore!
Austin 316 says I just whipped your ass. This is my iron. You're going to acknowledge me.
What's going on, everybody? Guys and girls, welcome back to another edition of the SmackDown Review right here on the WWE Podcast. As always, I am the host of this show, Michael Ritter. You can find me on X at Michael5Ritter, on Instagram at MichaelRitter5, and also the host of the Football Function Podcast, available on all your podcasting platforms and also available on Patreon if you prefer an ad-free listening experience. Today we are here to talk about the SmackDown that aired on June 14th, 2024. I was not here last week. Grim Reaper filled in for me. I was moving, or at least in the process of moving. And it wasn't even the fact that I wasn't moved into my new house. It was just a matter of my internet getting set up, and I had to wait on a certain day for it to get set up. I thought it was going to be while I was at work on Friday, and it ended up being Monday. So it put a big wrench in the plans of, or I guess the recording plans of not only this show, but every show that I do. So luckily that is over. I'm finally set up in this new recording area. It is pretty comfortable, I will say. It's not necessarily the biggest studio that I've ever had, but it is definitely, just the chapter that we're in now. So I'm going to embrace it. One other thing that I'm embracing is the Celtics being in the NBA Finals right now. Just, wanted to give them a quick shout out. I know they lost last night. It's the end of the world, right? Now they're up 3-1 instead of 3-0. They didn't sweep the Western Conference champion. Shocker, right? That the team that makes it to the NBA Finals is somewhat a good basketball team. So yeah, you have to give credit to the Dallas Mavericks, obviously, for pulling through, getting a win at home. Celtics still just need one, and there's 3 more games, so they just have to win 1 out of the next 3, and I truly believe that they will do that to gain their 18th NBA championship and their first finals victory in 16 years. Long time coming for sure. But it is 12:45 exactly right now. Clash at the Castle starts in exactly 15 minutes. So clearly I'm going to be recording this still whenever that show starts, but I'm going to go down there and watch it immediately after this, so luckily I'll be able to get some quick predictions for the card before I close it up here. But before that, I'm going to run through this episode of SmackDown and get you guys through, and it's actually my 199th SmackDown review here on the WWE Podcast. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and get into this one. I guess really quickly, before we officially dive in, just because I'm looking right at it, I've been collecting WWE wrestlers for about 2 years now. Obviously, whenever I was a kid, I had all kinds of wrestlers, right? Like the action figures. But whenever I was actually putting together a studio, I had a vision in mind how I wanted to set up a display of championship belts, wrestling action figures, just pretty much anything, all types of memorabilia. And I finally have a little bit of that coming together after, 3 years. So it's nice to finally have a good culmination of all the work that you put in. Because, there were some times where I was having to hide figures in a spot where they're not really visible. And once you start getting, 10, 20, 30, you have to put them up in a visible area where they're able to be seen by people. And that's kind of what I've done here. I have it set up by eras. It's a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 shelf, like stand almost. It's a circular shelf. It looks pretty cool. At the very top, I have my WCW guys. The second shelf, I have all of my legends. Third shelf, Ruthless Aggression era. Fourth shelf, modern. So I have Roman Reigns, LA Knight, Cody Rhodes, Sami Zayn, many, many others on that shelf. And then at the very bottom, I have just like the miscellaneous. Like I have Boogeyman, I have R-Truth, The Rock. And it's not your regular Rock. It's Hollywood Rock. So he has his guitar and he's playing it. So there's several figures there that I just didn't really have a spot for them on any of the other shelves. And who knows, once they continue to be added to the collection, once more figures get added to the collection, I'll be able to maybe spread those out a little bit, because I actually wanted to have a shelf dedicated strictly to women's wrestlers. Because I don't have nearly as many women's wrestlers, I have to kind of split those up throughout the other shelves. The only women's wrestlers I have right now are Trish Stratus, Charlotte Flair, Liv Morgan, and Stacy Keibler, believe it or not. So yeah, there's not really a deep collection, although, there's several others that I want to get. Obviously, I want to get Becky Lynch. I want to get Lita. Clearly, I want to get Chyna. I want to get Victoria, Molly Holly, just more from the Ruthless Aggression era. Maybe even get Jazz, if I can get my hands on a Jazz figure. So yeah, no doubt, this collection is only going to keep growing, but it's at a pretty good spot right now. And I had to give it a quick shout out here. Maybe I'll post a picture in the Discord of what this shelf looks like. But either way, now, without any further ado, let's go ahead and get into this episode of the SmackDown review. Like I said, aired on June 14th, 2024 from Glasgow, Scotland. And like we've done for the past, 2 years at this point for the go-home shows, SmackDown gets the leaked stage, right? Like, we get the preview of the stage, so I've always kind of appreciated that. And this is another version of it where if you just looked at the entrance, the slanted or curved, I should say, entrance ramp, the smaller stage, so we can fit in more people. It gives it a really good feeling, I will say, just as a go-home show, and it actually does feel like somewhat of a pay-per-view. And this one started off with a one-on-one match, Naomi versus Chelsea Green. And Chelsea gets distracted by Piper and Bayley exchanging words on the outside. And Naomi has a little bit of a sloppy finish. Looks like a little bit of a botched finishing move. I couldn't really tell exactly what was done, but it ended with a little bit of a roll-up, and Naomi does get the win here over Chelsea Green. And just a quick side note, it has nothing to do with the match, but I thought that Samantha Irvin was told that she's no longer allowed to give wrestlers like a specific or a individual entrance or announce their entrance, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. You guys know what I mean, right? The way that she does Chelsea Green's, the way that she does Ludwig Kaiser. There's been several wrestlers that just get a little bit of a unique tone whenever their name's getting announced. And I've always thought that was cool. It's not a copy and paste. Just every name sounds the exact same. She adds a little bit of life to her introductions. So I don't know, that was just something that kind of jumped out to me whenever I heard her do it very clearly on this one. She must have got the permission to do it again. But unfortunately, Chelsea Green, despite getting a unique introduction from Samantha Irvin, she does not get the win here up against Naomi. And up next, we get the Grayson Waller effect with DIY. And DIY immediately calls out A-Town Down Under, calls out their loyalty to each other, brings up what happened with Grayson Waller a couple weeks back. And then immediately after calling them out, they challenged them to a match for their tag team titles tonight. So they wanted to have it there on SmackDown, but obviously Grayson Waller was clearly trying to take shots at the crowd, saying that he is not going to give Scotland a tag team championship match, so just heel work from Grayson Waller. But you can tell that Theory and Waller, despite being the tag team champions, their reign or their run as a tag team, I don't feel like it's going to be very long. I think it's going to be somewhat short-lived because people are already trying to pry them apart. They're trying to drive a wedge in between these two guys. Even Johnny Gargano, who has history with Austin Theory, he tries to get through to him by referencing their time in The Way. He says that he's always believed in Austin Theory by himself. But it's clear that Waller is just using him. And as he's trying to continue, he gets cheap-shotted by Waller. And then, a little bit of a brawl breaks out. I wouldn't really call it anything too special because A-Town Down Under makes a run for it while their tag team championships are still left in the ring. And we get a nice, perfect posed frame for DIY to get a nice shot. We're going to use that for a video package later. I can guarantee that I do like DIY as a tag team. Individually, I don't really feel like they are, top guys. I don't think that they're ever going to be main eventers. But as a tag team, they could be at the very tip top. You think of teams like Paul London and Brian Kendrick, I think was his partner. I'm not really 100% on that. But I do know that Paul London was in a tag team back on SmackDown. And, they were a good team despite both of them being somewhat, quote-unquote, undersized. You can still make it work in tag team wrestling because there's so much that goes into it. There's so much nuance that you have to know in terms of, approaching the match differently. So I think that DIY being a true tag team, despite, Austin Theory, Grayson Waller being thrown together, they're still champs. DIY is probably the team that you don't want to run into because I think that, without a doubt, I had them winning that tournament. I thought that they were going to be the team that prevailed at WrestleMania. Unfortunately, I was wrong, but mark my words, I think they are going to be champs sooner rather than later. Up next, we get Santos Escobar versus Apollo Crews, with Legado del Fantasma being at ringside. You pretty much already knew that this match wasn't going to be fair for very long. So out comes Corbin to help even the odds, but Santos still walks away with the win. And the one thing I took away from this, Baron Corbin obviously trying to turn a new leaf. He went back to NXT to kind of boost himself up, maybe give himself a little bit of a jump start into this new version of himself, right? Like WrestleMania next year is in Vegas. We've all kind of talked about it, how bum-ass Corbin just feels like he belongs at WrestleMania. So why not start the arc now? And I'm not saying he has to start gambling or anything like that. I'm just saying the push, get him involved, get him more attention, more TV time. Because I do feel like he is someone that could be credible despite taking a lot of losses. Let's remember this is a guy that gave Kurt Angle his final loss at WrestleMania and retired him. Was that at WrestleMania? I'm not 100% sure now that I'm thinking about it. But nonetheless, Baron Corbin is the one who, if you ever look at Kurt Angle's final match, that's the name that's going to pop up. So whether you like him, whether you don't like him, he has things on his resume that are extremely impressive. I remember being at the Royal Rumble in 2017 whenever he single-handedly eliminated Braun Strowman. And I thought that elimination right there was going to put him over with the fans and that he was going to be skyrocketed in 2017. Now here we are, 7 years later, and he's still trying to find his home. Like, he's still trying to find a comfortable gimmick. He's trying to find the right role for himself. And I think that he's on the right path, no doubt about it. Going back to NXT, polishing your craft a little bit. Now you come back to the main roster. You're already well known. Now you got a chance to establish yourself a little bit more. And I just feel like the credibility and the believability that comes with Baron Corbin is there. Like, that's real. It's just all about how he's presented and how he's booked. And if he's booked properly, then I think he could be a force on SmackDown and he could be a thorn in the side of Legado del Fantasma, no doubt about it. Up next, we get a segment where Cody Rhodes, the undisputed WWE champion, comes out to the ring, and he pretty much just calls out AJ Styles for his quote-unquote fake retirement. And I have some thoughts on this, but before I get there, AJ comes out too, obviously. He starts to reference every single company that Cody Rhodes has quit on. I mean, obviously they're having an I Quit match. So he's trying to paint the picture for all of us that Cody Rhodes is a quitter. He's always been a quitter, and he's going to tell you why. I mean, he quit on New Japan, Ring of Honor. He even references AEW, talks about how he started a company and he quit on them too. You kind of knew it was coming, but I was curious if he would name drop them. And obviously he doesn't, but you knew exactly who he was talking to. And then Cody responds by saying that he's always willing and ready to chase anything greater. And that's what he did whenever he went to WWE. He didn't quit. And he was proven right. And then he tells AJ Styles that he had to become Mark Henry for a night to get his rematch at the WWE Championship. I thought that was hilarious. And AJ Styles pretty much just tells him that he's done whenever he says he's done. So look, the AJ Styles, Mark Henry stuff was hilarious. He even dressed like it. You know, that was an obvious callback. So the fact that it was acknowledged by Cody Rhodes on national television, I thought that was chef's kiss. But look, I like these international crowds just as much as the next guy. This is not a shot at the international crowds whatsoever. So please don't take it the wrong way. But man, the crowd during this segment in Scotland was absolutely insufferable. Like, look, it's one thing whenever the match is going on, you know, when you're focused in on the action and, you know, crowds get involved. They chant stuff. They're loud. They're cheering. They're booing, whatever. Like, as a paying customer, you're allowed to literally do whatever you want. I mean, to an extent. You can't just go out there and start throwing tomatoes and stuff. But you get what I'm saying, right? Like, you have a right as a fan to do whatever you want to do within the lines of, I guess, not breaking the law. But whenever they're cutting promos, whenever they're trying to connect the dots to further their storyline, to continue their program, and you're chanting absolute BS, that literally takes away from the product. It detracts. It makes you, like, distracted. Because, look, I literally am watching SmackDown 9 times out of 10 with a 6-year-old kid. It's just what it is. He's a diehard wrestling fan, just like I am, and he's been on the show before. So those of you that listen to that episode, you know exactly who I'm talking about. But he likes to chit-chat and ask a million questions during the show. And there's, you know, constant times where I have to say, Jet, they're cutting a promo. I need to listen to what they're saying so I can take notes. If they're in the middle of a match, then he and I can go back and forth and talk about stuff. But he knows for the most part that whether it's a backstage interview, whether somebody's cutting a promo in the ring, he knows for the most part that that's the time that you don't really talk, that you listen. You know, you let them fill in the blanks, because 9 times out of 10, they're going to answer whatever questions you have. But whenever it's the crowd and wrestlers are trying to cut a promo or just say something, anything in general, and the crowd is just making it about themselves, that is not my favorite type of live audience. Because look, they were literally just doing like I don't even know if it was like a song from Scotland, and they were just changing the words to Cody Rhodes. Don't know exactly what they were doing, but AJ Styles was literally trying to cut a promo, and even whenever Cody Rhodes was trying to cut a promo, they were still doing it. And it was just one of those things where I was like, man, like, I get it. You guys don't get an opportunity to let all this out. Let all this adrenaline and excitement and pure fandom, you know? Like, I get it. I'm with you guys. Like, I go to live events and I want to make some noise. I want to be loud. But I just will say that the more it goes on, the more distracted you become, because it's like, all right, so what did AJ Styles just say? What's he trying to say? Because at the same time, you're trying to listen to what the crowd's saying. That's just instinct. You're going to react when you hear a crowd chant. All right, what are they chanting? And sometimes it's hard to point out what they're saying, despite them speaking English. Sometimes the accent makes it a little bit hard when you got tens of thousands of people all chanting something. They have to be in sync. I'll be completely honest with you. They could be in Denver, Colorado, and sometimes I'm still like, wait, what are they chanting? I can't really hear. Like, I don't know exactly, because whenever you're chanting things with a large crowd, you have to be in sync. And to be completely honest, they're not chanting "this is awesome" or "you suck" or something like that. Like, it's something that you're kind of, all right, so they're chanting Cody Rhodes, but they're chanting it in a specific tune. So that's just my thought. It's not really like a complaint. It's just something where I'm just pointing it out. Like, man, I noticed it big time. And this is the first time where I actually had to write in my notes that the crowd was insufferable during a segment. But one little side note I have from this is I do appreciate a nice gimmick match, especially one that's, you know, it's not seen every day. There isn't a pay-per-view named after it. A good old-fashioned I Quit match to settle a feud that has a lot of bad blood. And when I say a lot of bad blood, I'm not saying these guys have been going at it for 8 months. But there's clearly enough animosity and enough, like, betrayal almost when you think about the fact that he was trying to shake his hand, respect him as he was, you know, hypothetically going into retirement. Obviously, that ended up not being true. But there's enough for Cody Rhodes to say, all right, it's time to take the gloves off. Like, you want to go, you want to hit below the belt, let's do this. So an I Quit match is arguably the perfect way to go. And I'll get to my predictions here in just a little bit. Let's see here. Up next, the Bloodline, a.k.a. the Tongans, attack the Street Profits backstage. We were supposed to get a 6-man tag match tonight. They were supposed to at least have Kevin Owens back. And now they're not going to be available. So Kevin Owens is going to have to go up against the Bloodline by himself at this point. That's what we're supposed to believe right now. So we'll see if that actually ends up being the case. We get a one-on-one match next that has been building for a few weeks now. Nia Jax versus Michin. And Nia Jax just continues her dominance with a very decisive win. You can give the assist to Tiffany Stratton, who was doing a little bit of a ringside commentary, aka ringside distracting, to help solidify this win for the Queen of the Ring. The next segment we got was a pre-taped little on-location segment. Supposedly took place in Puerto Rico in Logan Paul's pool, and apparently LA Knight was there waiting for him, just sitting in a floaty, having a drink. But as soon as Logan Paul gets there, LA Knight has to get out of town for whatever reason. Logan Paul obviously isn't happy about that, fires a security guard. Just a little bit of lightheartedness, I guess. Like, this wasn't too serious of a segment. Logan Paul wasn't clearly that upset. LA Knight was just having a good time in his pool. So yeah, these two dudes don't like each other, but this wasn't your typical like AJ Styles and LA Knight having a real fist fight at LA Knight or at AJ Styles' house, and the cops showing up during their whole WrestleMania build up. And even the fight they had like at the meet and greet or WrestleMania Access, whatever that was, that was a little bit different than what LA Knight's doing with Logan Paul right now. But nonetheless, seems like a pretty good spot for maybe Logan Paul to drop this title. That's all I'm saying. Just in this program, Logan's had it for a little while now. LA Knight seems like, he's not getting any younger. He's not going to, I don't want to say he's not getting any hotter, because he might. The crowd could still get behind him and he can get another push. But he's still one of the most, beloved wrestlers right now. It just makes sense to put a belt on him and let him represent the company as a babyface champion. But, Logan Paul remaining the champ, that makes total sense too. So I am all for that. And after this segment was over, we got a very mid promo from Carmelo Hayes. He's just the most scripted wrestler I've ever heard. Like, you can just tell he is trying so hard to be this persona of quote unquote him, and it's just wild. I feel like if he had Bobby Lashley's body or even Montez Ford's body, then I feel like maybe it would be a little bit more believable. But I will just be completely honest, I'm not a Carmelo Hayes fan. It started off just as a little bit of like, he's kind of rubbing me the wrong way, but now that I know he's officially a heel, it's like, okay, yeah, you can just continue to take these L's, and hopefully, LA Knight can handle whatever he's got going on with Logan Paul. And then we get a Carmelo Hayes versus LA Knight program going forward. And I will be fully on the side of LA Knight, because I think that he can run circles around Carmelo Hayes on the microphone. Now, Carmelo Hayes, I apologize, is talented in the ring. Don't get me wrong. I know how good he is, but his persona, and even then, it's just like, yeah, you're good, but like, come on now. I just feel like if there were a cruiserweight championship that actually meant something on the main roster, then yeah, I'd be booking Carmelo Hayes to be a dominant wrestler in that division. But if he's trying to be a top guy and go up against the likes of Drew McIntyre and Cody Rhodes and even LA Knight, I think that he's going to have a long road ahead of him. Let's see. Going backstage, Nick Aldis, he says that the Tongans are barred from ringside because of their attack on the Street Profits earlier. So it'll be one-on-one Solo Sikoa versus Kevin Owens, and he says that he will do some suspending if they do decide to show up at ringside. And Heyman tries to advise Solo not to do anything stupid, not to do anything that's going to jeopardize his status. And Solo says that if he loses, he's going after Paul Heyman. So, as unlikable as Carmelo Hayes is, man, him and Solo Sikoa are neck and neck right now on the SmackDown brand, just for absolutely despisable characters. Despisable, is that a word? Or despicable? Is that what was that the word I was going for there? I don't know. I pride myself in English being like my favorite subject in school, because think about it. As you grow up and as you go through life as an adult, you're not really using algebra every day. You're not necessarily using chemistry and physics and all of the science stuff. Now, you might use that a little bit more than math, but still, It's not something that you use every day. History, yes, it's nice to know. It's nice to be educated on what happened in previous decades, and be well educated on what happened in America and over the entire world through history classes. But I personally feel like English is the one subject that I feel like is used in your day-to-day life as an adult, especially if you're getting into podcasting, but even more so just communicating on a day-to-day basis with other adults. Like it's helpful to have a extended vocabulary. And, sometimes even though you take pride in trying to be educated in language arts, you're going to butcher some words from time to time. It happens. So that's just kind of one thing that I've come to accept at this point in my podcasting career. But anyways, this takes us to the Solo Sikoa versus Kevin Owens. And as soon as Solo wins this match, here comes the Tongans after it's over to try to beat up KO, get a nice little numbers disadvantage for him. And then Orton's music hits. And he comes out and makes light work of the quote-unquote midline. And I gotta say, this version of the Bloodline is doing some really bad damage to the reputation of the Bloodline as far as I'm concerned. Like, think of it like this. The Bloodline was the best storyline going on in wrestling for multiple years. And now it's just like this watered down version that's literally a bootleg. That's what Kevin Owens called them. And it's almost like whenever a wrestler or a professional athlete stays around too long, like nobody wants to remember Seattle Seahawks and Denver Broncos Jerry Rice. Nobody wants to remember Buffalo Bills Terrell Owens, Nobody really wants to remember Indianapolis Colts Matt Ryan. There's several other players that went to different teams. The New York Jets LaDainian Tomlinson. Seattle Seahawks Adrian Peterson. So many different players have gone to different teams. Arizona Cardinals Emmitt Smith. Now I'm just kind of getting way ahead of myself, but you guys get the picture. The Bloodline at one point was just such a pillar for what SmackDown and WWE as a whole is. And if you were to, get in a coma 2 or 3 months ago and wake up and see this version of the Bloodline, you'd probably want to go back into your coma. Like, you'd probably say, what the hell is going on here? But that's just kind of how I feel about it. Obviously, there's some things on the show right now that I'm not necessarily too pleased with, but, it'll get better. I truly believe that. I just think that it comes down to getting into more of a, meaningful part of the year, as crazy as that sounds. Right now, we're still kind of in that creeping up to SummerSlam. We're getting into Money in the Bank. So I do expect them to kind of rev it up a little bit, starting with Clash of the Castle that started 23 minutes ago. I have not seen a single thing. So I have no idea what's going on. I haven't, seen a match. I have no idea what match is first. I'm literally going right now to my web browser so I can go to Google and get a quick little list of the matches. I do want to see the match card for Clash of the Castle so I can make my quick predictions here. If you'll just bear with me, I could easily pause my microphone right now and then pull this up, but why not? Why do all that nonsense? Let's just go ahead and pull it up. I'm going to stall a little bit. All right, here we go. Bianca Belair, Jade Cargill versus Fire and Dawn, I apologize, and Baszler and Stark in a women's tag team triple threat match. I know the whole shtick on triple threat matches. The champions don't have to get pinned to lose their title. Yada, yada, yada. I do not care. Bianca Belair, Jade Cargill are going to retain. Next match, Sami Zayn versus Chad Gable, Intercontinental Championship. Admittedly, I've not been watching Raw a whole lot lately, so I am not as up to speed on everything, but I am a little bit up to speed on this specific program, and I love what they've been doing with the Alpha Academy and with Otis. So I think that it's brilliant television, great storytelling, but I still think Sami Zayn retains here, although if Chad Gable were to win, it wouldn't necessarily, completely throw me for a loop. Bayley versus Piper, Women's Championship, WWE Women's Championship. Bayley, her win at Mania, the build up to it, the Royal Rumble victory, all of that meant too much to lose to Piper. Now, this could be a great showing for Piper, given that she is obviously a hometown kid here, but I do not think it's going to be enough for her to defeat Bayley. And I know that might be a little bit of a hot take. Some people might think that it's time for Piper to get this win. But I think that it's more so time for Bayley to continue her reign. Up next, we get Damian Priest versus Drew McIntyre for the World Heavyweight Championship. Give me Drew McIntyre to win this championship in front of his home country and finally get his moment. And no Money in the Bank winner is going to come out and ruin it for him. I think Drew gets it done. Cody Rhodes versus AJ Styles for the undisputed WWE Championship in an I Quit match. There's no way in hell that Cody Rhodes loses this. I mean, you guys saw what happened to him against Seth Rollins, and he got his pec tore off the bone or whatever the hell it was. Yeah, that ain't happening again. And even if it does, he ain't quitting. So clearly there's no quitting this guy. And I don't know how he's going to make AJ Styles say it, but there has to be a way, because I don't see a way that Cody Rhodes walks out of this match without the undisputed WWE Championship. So that does it for me here, guys, for the 199th episode of the SmackDown Review. I will be back next week for the 200th episode of the SmackDown Review. A little bit of a bittersweet episode, and we'll talk about that next week. But nonetheless, guys, thank you so much for tuning in here. Hopefully you will be back next week. Continue to support the WWE podcast in all of the ways, whether it's on the social medias, on Patreon, the Discord, anything like that. Definitely go leave some ratings and reviews and get your opinion voiced. But with all that being said, guys, enjoy Clash at the Castle. Enjoy your weekend. Walk passionately in the direction of your dreams, and I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for listening to the WWE Podcast. Don't forget to subscribe on your favorite podcast app so you don't miss a show, or head to WWEpodcast.com. And for all of these shows ad-free, head over to patreon.com/WWE Podcast. Until then, we'll see you next time.